The phone rang at 9:17 p.m. on a cold Chicago night, cutting through the quiet hum of the apartment. Ethan Harper stared at the screen, his sister's name flashing like a warning. "Ethan, it's Mom. She's been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. The doctors say it's progressing fast, and she's been asking for you by name." 14 years after she had looked him in the eye and said he was no longer her son for being gay, those words landed like a punch to the chest. He set the phone down slowly, his hands shaking, while Liam Brooks watched from the couch, concern etched across his face. Ethan had built a life far from the suburban house where he grew up. At 20, during a tense family dinner, he had finally said the words, "I'm gay." His mother, Vivian, had frozen, then exploded in tears and accusations. His father stayed silent, as always. By the end of the night, she had packed a bag for him and told him never to come back, her voice cold with finality. "This is not the life I raised you for. You chose this, so live it without us." He left with nothing but a backpack and the sting of her rejection. The years that followed were a blur of odd jobs, cheap apartments, and the slow rebuilding of his sense of self. Then he met Liam at a community center event for young professionals. Liam, with his easy smile and steady presence, became the anchor Ethan never knew he needed. They had been together for 8 years now, sharing a sunlit apartment in Logan Square, a rescue dog named Milo, and a circle of friends who felt more like family than blood ever had. But the call changed everything. Rebecca, his older sister, kept talking on the line, her voice tight. She lived only 20 minutes from the nursing facility where their mother now stayed. "She doesn't remember a lot, Ethan. The disease is taking pieces of her. But when she has her clearer moments, she calls your name. I think you should come." Ethan wanted to laugh at the irony. The woman who had erased him from her life now had her memory erasing the very hatred that drove him away. Liam crossed the room and took his hand. "You don't owe her anything. She made her choice back then. This could open old wounds that we worked so hard to close." Ethan nodded, but inside, a storm brewed. Part of him wanted to hang up and pretend the call never happened. Another part, the boy who once craved his mother's approval, felt a pull he could not explain. The next morning, Ethan drove to the facility on the outskirts of the city. The building was modern but sterile, with wide hallways that smelled of disinfectant and faint lavender air freshener. Rebecca met him in the lobby, her eyes red from lack of sleep. She hugged him briefly, the kind of hug that carried years of unspoken guilt. "She's in room 214. Be prepared. Some days are better than others." When Ethan stepped into the room, Vivian sat by the window in a pale blue cardigan, staring at the bare trees outside. Her once sharp features had softened with age and illness. Her hair, now mostly white, was neatly brushed. She turned as he entered, and for a moment, her eyes lit with something like recognition. "Ethan?" she said, her voice soft and uncertain. He froze. She extended her hand toward him, trembling slightly. Without thinking, he crossed the room and took it. Her grip was surprisingly strong, her skin thin and papery. She held on as if he were a lifeline, stroking the back of his hand with her thumb. "You've been gone so long, sweetheart. Where did you go?" In that moment, there was no trace of the woman who had slammed the door on him. No judgment, no disgust, just a mother reaching for her son. Ethan felt tears burn behind his eyes. He sat beside her, letting her hold his hand while she talked in fragments about the past that no longer matched reality. She spoke of his childhood soccer games and family vacations, stories she had once weaponized against him. Liam's warning echoed in his mind, but as the minutes stretched, Ethan could not pull away. The price of walking back into her life was already clear. Every touch reopened the scar he thought had healed. That evening, back home, Ethan told Liam everything. They sat at the kitchen table with mugs of coffee going cold. Liam listened quietly, then said, "I love you, and I'll support whatever you decide. But I remember what it did to you the first time. If this pulls you under, we both pay the price." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed his partner's hand. He knew Liam was right. Their relationship had been built on honesty and chosen family, not the conditional love he had grown up with. Yet the image of his mother holding his hand refused to leave him. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of blood ties pulling against the life he had chosen. As he lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling while Liam slept beside him, Ethan wondered how many pieces of himself he would have to sacrifice to answer her call. The visits became routine faster than Ethan expected. 3 times a week, he drove through Chicago traffic to the facility, bringing small things Vivian seemed to like: fresh flowers, her favorite lemon cookies, or a soft blanket for her lap. Each time, she greeted him with that same disarming affection, holding his hand as if no time or pain had passed between them. "My good boy," she would murmur, her eyes distant yet warm. The nurses commented on how she lit up when he arrived. Rebecca joined him sometimes, her presence a careful buffer. She had 2 kids now, a husband who worked long hours, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. But Ethan sensed the strain in her too. One afternoon in early spring, Vivian had a clearer day. She recognized him more fully and asked about his job. Ethan hesitated, then told her about his work in marketing, carefully avoiding any mention of Liam. She nodded along, smiling. "You always were creative. Remember when you drew those pictures for me?" The conversation felt almost normal, until she patted his hand and said, "You'll find a nice girl one day. I always prayed for that." The words landed like a slap. Even with the disease stealing her memories, the old expectations lingered in fragments. Ethan excused himself to the hallway, breathing hard against the wall. Rebecca found him there. "She doesn't know what she's saying," his sister insisted. But Ethan shook his head. "That's the problem. Part of her still believes it. And I spent years trying to forget she ever said those things to my face." The confrontation with Rebecca had been building. Back at her house that evening, over takeout Chinese food, the dam broke. "You never told me how bad it got for her after I left," Ethan said, his voice low. "You let me think she was fine without me." Rebecca set her fork down, eyes flashing. "What was I supposed to do? You were gone, building your new life with Liam." Mom was devastated. She cried for months. I was the one who stayed and watched her fall apart. The accusation hung between them. Ethan felt the old family dynamics resurface. Rebecca as the dutiful daughter, him as the disappointment who walked away. "You encouraged her, didn't you?" he asked quietly. "Back then, when I came out, you told her it was a phase, that I was confused because of Dad's absence." Rebecca looked away, tears forming. "I was scared too. For all of us. The church, the neighbors, everything we knew said it was wrong." The betrayal stung deeper than he expected. His own sister had helped seal the door his mother slammed. That night, Ethan returned home late. Liam was grading papers at the dining table, Milo curled at his feet. The tension between them had grown with each visit. "You're pulling away," Liam said without looking up. "I get that this is complicated, but we're supposed to be a team. Instead, I feel like I'm competing with a ghost." Ethan sat across from him, exhausted. "It's not competition. It's unfinished business. I thought I was over it, but seeing her like this, it makes me question everything I believed about her." Liam finally met his eyes. "And what about us? What price are we paying while you chase closure she'll never be able to give?" The question lingered as they went to bed in silence. Ethan lay awake, his hand still remembering the feel of his mother's grip. He had sacrificed family once for his truth. Now, caring for the woman who rejected that truth threatened to cost him the man he loved. The internal war raged. Compassion versus self-protection, duty versus the life he had fought to build. Week after week, the visits continued. Vivian's condition fluctuated. On bad days, she mistook him for her late husband or a childhood friend. On better ones, she held his hand and told him stories that skipped over the painful years. Each time she reached for him, Ethan felt both healed and torn. The disease had stripped away her prejudice, leaving only the love she once withheld. But at what cost to the people still living with the consequences? Summer brought longer days and deeper cracks in Ethan's world. Work suffered as he took more time off, missing deadlines and important client meetings. His boss pulled him aside one Friday, concern mixed with warning. "I understand family emergencies, Ethan, but we need you present. This can't become permanent." The words echoed his own fears. He had built a career from nothing after being kicked out, proving to himself that he did not need his mother's approval. Now, that same drive was being diverted back to her. Liam's patience wore thin during a rare weekend away at a cabin in Wisconsin. They had planned the trip months earlier to celebrate their anniversary, but Ethan's mind kept drifting to the facility. On the second night, after a quiet dinner, Liam set his wine glass down hard. "This is supposed to be about us. Instead, you're checking your phone every hour to see if the nurse called." Ethan tried to explain. "She's declining faster than they thought. If I don't go now, I might miss the chance to." "To what?" He could not finish the sentence. Liam stood, pacing the small living room. "To get the apology she can't give? To rewrite history? I supported you going back because I love you, but I won't watch you disappear into this. We've talked about marriage, kids, maybe through adoption. How does that fit when half your heart is still trying to earn love from someone who threw you away?" The confrontation escalated. Ethan accused Liam of being unsupportive. Liam countered that Ethan was choosing the past over their future. They slept on opposite sides of the bed that night, the distance wider than the miles back to Chicago. Monday brought another visit. Vivian was having a restless day, wandering the halls until staff guided her back. When Ethan arrived, she clutched his hand immediately, her eyes wide with fear. "Don't leave me again. Everyone leaves." He stayed for hours, reading to her from an old photo album Rebecca had brought. In one picture, a young Vivian smiled beside her two children at the beach. Ethan stared at his own boyish face, wondering where that innocent bond had fractured. As she dozed, he whispered the words he had never said aloud to her. "I forgave you a long time ago, but I never got to tell you how much it hurt." The confession brought no relief, only more questions. Was forgiveness even possible when the person who needed to hear it no longer existed in the same way? The strain at home reached a breaking point when Liam came home to find Ethan packing an overnight bag. "I'm staying at the facility tonight," they called. "She had a fall." Liam's face hardened. "Then go. But when this is over, whenever that is, don't expect me to be waiting in the same place." The ultimatum hung in the air. Ethan drove away with a heavy chest, torn between the man who had stood by him through everything and the mother whose hand had once pushed him out the door. That night, sitting in the dimly lit room while Vivian slept, he realized the true price. Every hour spent here was an hour taken from the life he and Liam had built together. Social prejudice still lingered too. At the facility, a few staff members exchanged looks when he mentioned his partner. One older volunteer even asked if he had a wife. The subtle judgments reminded him why he had left his old world behind. Rebecca called the next morning, her voice shaky. "I need to tell you something. Before you came back, Mom had moments where she talked about you. Not always kindly. The disease is erasing the bad parts now, but they were there." The partial confession confirmed what Ethan suspected. His return was not just about care. It was about facing the full weight of what had been lost and what could never be fully restored. As summer heat pressed on the city, Ethan stood at a crossroads, every choice carrying the risk of losing someone he loved. Autumn leaves turned the streets golden as Vivian's lucid moments grew rarer. During one unexpected clear afternoon in October, she looked at Ethan with sharper focus than she had in months. "I remember now," she said suddenly, her voice firmer. "You told us something that hurt me. Something about who you are." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had waited years for this, yet dreaded it. "Yes, Mom. I told you I was gay." She frowned, processing the words through the fog. For a moment, the old disapproval flickered across her face. "That wasn't the plan. I wanted grandchildren, a normal family." Then the confusion returned, and she squeezed his hand tighter. "But you're here now. That's what matters." The brief exchange left Ethan reeling. The disease had given her a momentary window to confront the past, only to slam it shut again. He left the room shaken, questioning whether he wanted her to remember at all. That same week, Rebecca revealed more during a tense lunch near the facility. I was the one who told her it would destroy the family if you stayed. I showed her articles from church groups. I thought I was protecting everyone. The betrayal cut deep. Ethan stared at his sister across the table. You helped her reject me. Rebecca nodded, tears falling. And I've regretted it every day since. But when she started forgetting, it felt like a second chance for all of us. The moral weight pressed on Ethan. Was it fair to hold anger toward a woman whose mind was betraying her? Or toward a sister who had been young and scared herself? He drove home in silence, the leaves crunching under his tires like the fragments of his family history. Liam met him at the door that evening, his expression guarded but open. They talked for hours, really talked, about the fears and the love that still bound them. Liam admitted his jealousy was rooted in worry. I don't want to lose you to this. Ethan pulled him close. You're not losing me, but I have to see this through. Not for her, but for the man I want to be. They made love that night with a tenderness that had been missing for months, reconnecting amid the chaos. Yet the next morning, Ethan received a call from work. His extended absences had led to a formal warning. The sacrifice was becoming tangible. His career, his relationship, his peace of mind, all balanced against the fragile hand that reached for him each visit. Another confrontation came when a new aide at the facility, unaware of the family history, commented on how wonderful it was for a son to care for his mother so devotedly. The words were innocent, but they highlighted the selective memory the disease had created. No one there knew the full story of rejection. Only Ethan carried it. In quiet moments alone with Vivian, he found himself speaking truths she could no longer fully process. I built a good life, Mom, with a man I love. You would have hated it back then, but it's real. Her responses were fragmented, sometimes affirming, sometimes confused. Each interaction chipped away at his resentment, replacing it with a complicated grief for the mother she could have been. As the leaves fell, Ethan realized the disease was not just erasing her prejudice. It was forcing him to examine his own. Could he truly love the version of her that remained, or was he clinging to the illusion of reconciliation? The internal conflict deepened with every decision. Whether to push for more aggressive treatments, how much of his time to give, and what boundaries to set with Liam and Rebecca. The price of staying was becoming clearer. He was losing pieces of his present to rewrite a past that could never be fully mended. Winter arrived with biting winds off Lake Michigan, mirroring the chill in Ethan's heart during Vivian's sudden decline. She fell ill with pneumonia, landing in the hospital for 2 weeks. Doctors presented options: aggressive antibiotics and ventilation, or comfort care to let nature take its course. As the medical proxy alongside Rebecca, Ethan faced the ultimate moral dilemma. She wouldn't want to suffer, Rebecca argued. But Ethan remembered the woman who had once been fiercely independent. What if she comes back from this? What if this is the last chance? The decision tore at him. Choosing comfort care felt like giving up on the mother who now held his hand so trustingly. Choosing to fight meant more months of strain on his life with Liam and his job. Liam stood by him through the hospital vigils, bringing coffee and quiet strength. One night in the waiting room, they talked about the future. Marry me, Liam said suddenly, taking Ethan's hand. Not because of this crisis, but because I don't want to face any more of life without you as my husband. The proposal brought tears and a moment of pure joy amid the pain. Ethan said yes, the ring a simple band they picked out the next day during a brief break. Yet even in that happiness, guilt lingered. How could he celebrate while his mother fought for breath down the hall? The crisis peaked when Vivian stabilized enough to return to the facility, but her cognition had slipped further. During one visit, she held Ethan's hand for a long time, her eyes distant. My son, she whispered. I love you. The words, unfiltered by memory or judgment, broke something open in him. He wept quietly, the years of pain and the unexpected tenderness colliding. Rebecca joined them, and for the first time the three shared a fragile peace. But the betrayal still smarted. Ethan confronted her privately later. You helped create the rift. Now you're asking me to forget it. Rebecca nodded. I am. Because holding on only hurts you now. The conversation forced Ethan to weigh justice against mercy. The disease had removed his mother's capacity for accountability. Was it right to demand it anyway? Work eventually let him go with a severance package, the final price of his divided attention. He took it as a sign to focus on what mattered. With Liam's support, he began planning a small wedding for spring. The relationship, tested by fire, emerged stronger. Liam's steady presence reminded Ethan daily that chosen family could heal what blood had broken. Yet the caregiving continued, a daily reminder of loss and unexpected grace. Friends offered help, but the emotional labor remained his. Each time Vivian reached for his hand, he felt the weight of every choice. To stay, to forgive, to let the past rest. As the holidays approached, Ethan decorated a small tree in her room. She watched with childlike wonder, holding his hand the entire time. The scene was both beautiful and heartbreaking. The man who had been rejected now provided the comfort she once denied him. The moral questions multiplied. Was this redemption, or simply the cruel mercy of a disease that stole her ability to choose differently? Spring blossoms returned to Chicago as Vivian's health stabilized into a gentle decline. Ethan and Liam married in a small ceremony by the lake, surrounded by friends and Rebecca's family. Vivian could not attend, but Ethan brought her flowers the next day and told her about it in simple terms. She smiled and held his hand, calling him her good boy once more. The wedding marked a turning point. Ethan had chosen love over resentment, presence over escape. The internal battles had not vanished, but they had quieted into acceptance of what could not be changed. In the final months, moments of connection grew rarer but more precious. Vivian's world shrank to the room, the window, and the hand that held hers. Ethan sat with her often, reading, talking, or simply being. The prejudice that once defined their relationship had vanished entirely, replaced by a pure, uncomplicated bond. He realized the disease had not redeemed her sins so much as stripped them away, leaving space for the love that had always existed beneath. Rebecca visited too, the sisters' shared guilt evolving into mutual support. The family that had fractured was knitting itself back together in imperfect, unexpected ways. One warm May afternoon, Vivian took Ethan's hand for the last time with unusual strength. "Thank you for coming back," she said clearly. Then her eyes closed, and she drifted into sleep. She passed peacefully 2 days later, surrounded by her children. At the funeral, Ethan spoke briefly about forgiveness and the complicated paths families travel. Liam stood beside him, their rings glinting in the sunlight. The service brought closure, but not simple answers. In the quiet weeks that followed, Ethan reflected on the journey. He had lost time, career momentum, and pieces of his peace. He had gained a deeper understanding of compassion and the limits of memory. The hand that once rejected him had, in the end, reached for him without conditions. But the questions remained. Was it true forgiveness that brought Ethan back to care for the mother who rejected him? Or was it the Alzheimer's disease that simply removed her ability to reject him again?